It happened at 0200 hours, Gulf Standard Time. The Aegis Combat System, the impenetrable shield of the United States Navy for over 4 decades, has been defeated. The Pentagon has just confirmed the USS Mason, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, has been mission killed in the Strait of Hormuz. Gun camera footage is now leaking, and it shows a billion-dollar warship's defenses being systematically dismantled by a swarm of low-cost Iranian drones. The footage is chaos incarnate, but the intelligence is brutally clear. The horrifying question is no longer if Iran can challenge American naval supremacy, but how their asymmetric doctrine, a terrifying blend of swarm tactics and advanced electronic warfare, just rendered the world's most sophisticated warship combat ineffective in under 12 minutes. And which U.S. carrier is their next target? The attack began without warning. No formal declaration, no overt threats beyond the usual rhetoric. The USS Mason was conducting a routine freedom of navigation transit through the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil choke point. On its screens, the Aegis system, powered by the formidable SPY-1D radar, presented a clear picture. Commercial traffic, a few fishing dhows, nothing out of the ordinary. Then, the sky changed. From the coastline of Iran, a wave of low-flying targets appeared. Not 10, not 20. Initial estimates from CENTCOM are now confirming over 150 individual drones lifted off simultaneously. This was not a probe. This was a decapitation strike, aimed squarely at the heart of American naval power projection. The crew of the Mason responded by the book, their training honed over countless drills for this exact scenario. The ship's commander immediately brought all systems to full alert. The layers of the Aegis shield engaged. First, the long-range interceptors. Standard Missile 2 or SM-2s leapt from their vertical launch cells, brilliant spears of light in the pre-dawn blackness. Each missile, costing over $1.7 million, streaked towards its target. They found their marks. Drones disintegrated into fireballs miles from the ship. But for every drone killed, 3 more seemed to take its place. The sheer volume was staggering. The Iranian drones were not simple weapons. Analysis of the leaked footage reveals at least 3 distinct types operating in concert. The first were decoys, simple airframes designed to light up the Mason's radar and absorb the initial volley of expensive interceptors. The second wave consisted of loitering munitions, direct descendants of the Shahed 136, packed with high explosives and programmed for terminal attack runs. The third, and most sinister, were electronic warfare drones. They weren't carrying explosives, they were carrying the seeds of chaos. As the drone swarm closed to within the 10-mile envelope, the ship's medium-range defenses kicked in. The evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, the ESSMs, began firing in rapid succession. 4 missiles can be packed into a single VLS cell, giving the Arleigh Burke a deep magazine for just this kind of saturation attack. More drones were swatted from the sky. The air became thick with smoke and falling debris, but the swarm did not break. It did not falter. It just kept coming, an inexorable tide of low-cost, expendable machines against a finite supply of multi-million-dollar interceptors. The core of the Iranian strategy became terrifyingly apparent. They were not trying to outfight the Aegis system. They were trying to exhaust it. This is the central pillar of asymmetric warfare, a doctrine the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has perfected. They know they cannot build a warship that can go toe-to-toe with an American destroyer, so they don't try. Instead, they focus on exploiting economic and tactical vulnerabilities. They calculated the exact number of interceptors a destroyer carries. They built a swarm large enough to drain that magazine, deliberately sacrificing dozens of their own drones to ensure that a handful would inevitably get through. They were trading pickup trucks for Porsches, and they had an entire factory floor of trucks. And then came the electronic attack. The third type of drone began its work. It wasn't simple jamming to blind the radar. That's a decades-old tactic the Aegis is hardened against. This was different. Leaked communications from the Mason's bridge, now circulating on secured intelligence channels, speak of ghosts on the scope and corrupted targeting data. The EW drones, working in a coordinated network, began feeding the SPY-1D radar false information. Friendly aircraft transponders suddenly appeared in the middle of the swarm, targeting solutions for the ship's weapons would lock, and then suddenly flicker and fail. Rehook. This wasn't just jamming. This was a targeted, network-level intrusion. It suggests a level of cyber sophistication from Iran's military intelligence that has advanced by an order of magnitude, completely in the dark, and outside of Western intelligence estimates. The critical question operators are now asking is no longer just how to stop the drones, but how do you trust your own sensors when the enemy is inside your network, actively rewriting what you see? With the crew in the Combat Information Center fighting their own screens, The physical attack entered its terminal phase. The surviving loitering munitions began their final dives. This is where the last line of defense comes into play. The Phalanx Close-In Weapon System, or CIWS, a 20mm Vulcan cannon slaved to its own radar, designed to shred incoming threats with a blistering fire rate of 4,500 rounds per minute. The gun camera footage shows the Mason's 2 Phalanx mounts coming alive, spitting a torrent of tungsten rounds into the darkness. The sound is deafening, a mechanical roar of final desperation. It is the last stand of a 21st-century warship. The CIWS tracks and obliterates one drone, then snaps its aim to another, destroying it in a shower of sparks. But it can only engage one target at a time, and there were still more than 30 drones on a terminal attack vector. The system was saturated. The decision cycle of both the machine and the men operating it was broken. The first drone hit the primary radar array, not with a massive, ship-splitting explosion, but with a targeted blast designed to cripple the vessel's senses. The high-explosive warhead shredded the delicate phased array panels of the SPY-1D. The eyes of the Aegis system went dark. The second and third drones struck near the vertical launch cells, not penetrating the armored deck but causing significant fires and damaging the launch mechanisms. The fourth hit the ship's primary communication mast. In an instant, the USS Mason was blinded and deafened. It was a textbook mission kill. The ship was not sunk. The crew casualties, according to initial reports, are miraculously low, estimated in the single digits. But the warship is now a floating piece of steel. It cannot fight. It cannot see. It cannot communicate. It is, for all intents and purposes, out of the war. A $1.8 billion asset, neutralized by a swarm of weapons that, in total, likely cost less than a single one of its own interceptor missiles. The Pentagon is scrambling, trying to understand the full scope of the attack. But the Iranians are not waiting, because the destroyer was never the final target. It was just the opening move. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is a formidable vessel, but its primary purpose in a major carrier strike group is to act as a shield. It is the bodyguard, and Iran just proved to the world that it can kill the bodyguard. This entire operation was a proof of concept, a live-fire demonstration designed to send a single, terrifying message to the commander of the USS Gerald R. Ford, currently on station just outside the Persian Gulf. The message is simple. Your shield is broken. You are next. A U.S. carrier strike group is the single most powerful military force on Earth. It is a sovereign American territory that can move anywhere on the world's oceans, projecting unparalleled air and sea power. Its defenses are layered and redundant, far exceeding that of a lone destroyer. The carrier is protected by its own air wing of F/18 Super Hornets and F-35C Lightning IIs, flying a constant combat air patrol. It has its own E-2D Hawkeye aircraft, providing a god's eye view of the entire battlespace. It is escorted by Ticonderoga-class cruisers and multiple Arleigh Burke destroyers, all linked together in a cooperative engagement capability, sharing targeting data in real time. To an outside observer, it seems invincible, an unassailable fortress of steel and fire. But the Iranians have just exposed the foundational assumption upon which that entire defensive strategy is built. They have shown that the Aegis system, the digital network that connects the shields of the entire fleet, can be overwhelmed, exhausted, and deceived. They are not planning a frontal assault. They are planning to dismantle the carrier's defenses piece by piece. Their strategy is not to sink the carrier with one lucky shot, but to isolate it, to strip away its escorts one by one using these new swarm tactics, leaving the $10 billion prize exposed and vulnerable. And they have more than just drones. For years, the IRGC has been developing a suite of anti-access/area denial weapons specifically to target American carriers. This includes the Khalij Fars, a supersonic anti-ship ballistic missile, often called the carrier killer. It includes swarms of Ghadir-class midget submarines designed to operate in the shallow, cluttered waters of the Persian Gulf, waiting to ambush a high-value target. It includes hundreds of heavily armed fast-attack boats, ready to swarm a carrier with a barrage of sea-skimming cruise missiles. The drone attack on the Mason was not an isolated event. It was the synchronization of one weapon system into a much larger, multi-domain kill chain. Intelligence now coming out of the region suggests an unprecedented level of activity. U.S. reconnaissance assets, from RC-135 Rivet Joint aircraft to unmanned RQ-4 Global Hawks, are watching Iranian military sites with an intensity not seen since the tanker wars of the 1980s. What they are seeing is alarming. Satellite imagery from less than an hour ago has just been analyzed by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. It shows the transporter erector launchers for Iran's anti-ship ballistic missile brigades are dispersing from their known garrisons. They are moving into pre-prepared launch positions along the coast. Positions that have been dormant for years. They are not just mobilizing, they are preparing to fire. Simultaneously, a high-level source within the Mossad has just passed a warning to their American counterparts. A human intelligence asset deep inside the IRGC's Naval Command reports that their entire fleet of midget submarines has gone to sea. They left their pens at Bandar Abbas within the last 3 hours. Their location is currently unknown. They are actively hunting. But amid this storm of conventional military intelligence, one piece of data, one terrifying anomaly, has just been flagged by a team at the NSA's Cyber Command. The analysis of the Mason's final data burst before its comms were cut reveals something impossible. The Iranian drone swarm wasn't just smart. It was prescient. It knew the ship's maintenance cycles and the exact timing of its defensive system handoffs. How? The horrifying conclusion is now inescapable. The kill chain didn't start in Iran. It started inside the U.S. Navy's own network. The kill chain didn't start in Iran. It started inside the U.S. Navy's own network. This wasn't a hack. This was a betrayal. A sophisticated, deeply embedded parasite that had been living dormant within the most secure military networks on the planet. Waiting. But how? Who could possibly have access to this level of the system? And for what purpose? This single data point recontextualizes the entire attack. The destruction of the Mason wasn't just a military strike. It was an activation signal. The team at Fort Meade calls it Janus, a two-faced entity. To the network's automated security sweeps, it appeared as a routine diagnostic tool, a benign piece of code meant to optimize data flow. But its other face, the one it showed to its masters in Tehran, was a weapon of unparalleled precision. Janus didn't just steal data. It learned. For months, perhaps years, it has been studying the U.S. Navy. It knows the patrol schedules, the crew rotations, the maintenance logs for every phalanx CIWS in the Fifth Fleet. It knows the specific radar frequencies the Aegis system uses to track different threats. It didn't just give Iran the keys to the castle. It handed them the blueprints, the guard schedules, and the psychological profile of the king. On board the USS Gerald R. Ford, the atmosphere in the Flag Combat Information Center is ice cold. Rear Admiral Viper Thompson, a man forged in the cockpit of an F-14 Tomcat, stares at the main tactical plot. The red icon representing the crippled USS Mason blinks accusingly. Around him, his staff move with a quiet, frantic energy, voices low and clipped. They are flying blind. Every piece of intelligence coming in is now suspect. Every satellite feed, every radio intercept, every radar contact could be a lie, fed to them by the ghost in their own machine. A communications officer leans over, his face pale. "Admiral, we've just lost our primary link with the USS Normandy." The Normandy is a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, the primary air defense commander for the entire strike group. Their Aegis system is reporting cascading software failures. They say it's not a hardware issue. They're being erased from the inside out. The Admiral's knuckles turn white as he grips the edge of the console. This is it. The strategy is clear. Isolate, blind, dismember. The Iranians, guided by Janus, are not just attacking his ships. They are attacking the network that binds them together. They are dissolving the fleet. The question is no longer how to fight back. The question is, can they fight back? How do you fight an enemy who is already inside your head? An enemy who knows your every move before you do? The Aegis system, the pride of the U.S. Navy, relies on trust. Each ship must trust the data provided by its neighbors to build a complete picture of the battlespace. But Janus has turned that strength into a fatal weakness. It has weaponized doubt. The Admiral can no longer trust his own eyes. The blip on the screen. Is it a commercial airliner or a volley of Khalij Far's missiles that Janus is masking? The radio call for help. Is it a friendly ship in distress? Or a digital lure to draw his assets into a trap? Deep in the carrier's cyber warfare module, a young lieutenant commander and her team are in a desperate firefight. They are not launching missiles. They are typing lines of code, fighting a war in a domain measured in nanoseconds. They are trying to hunt Janus, to corner it, to cut it out of the network. But it's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Every time they get close, it shifts, it mutates, it burrows deeper into the ship's core operating systems. It is more than a piece of malware. It's behaving like an intelligent adversary. It anticipates their moves, sets digital ambushes, and even begins to fight back, actively trying to shut down the Ford's own life support and damage control systems. Suddenly, a new piece of intelligence comes in, this one from a source believed to be clean, an F-35C flying a high-altitude patrol, running on a firewalled, standalone system. The pilot is reporting visual contact. A flotilla of over 50 IRGC fast attack boats has just surged from the Strait of Hormuz. They are not hiding. They are charging at full speed directly towards the strike group's last known position. It's a classic swarm tactic, designed to overwhelm the remaining point defenses of the escort ships. But it's also a feint, a distraction. Admiral Thompson sees it immediately. "They're trying to pull our focus low," he says, his voice a low growl. "They want us looking at the surface." He turns to his air boss. "Where are my Hawkeyes? I want a full spectrum scan of the upper atmosphere now." But the link to the E-2D Hawkeye, their all-important eye in the sky, is one of the links that Janus has severed. They are partially blind. The attack boats are the bait. But what are they the bait for? The answer comes not from a screen, but from a laconic voice over a barely functional backup radio channel. It's the pilot of that same F-35. "Viper, this is Ghost Lead. I have multiple ballistic missile launches. Repeat, multiple launches detected. Boost phase visible from my position. Trajectory is... oh God. They're coming right for you." In the CIC, a collective intake of breath. The carrier killers are in the air. This is the moment they had trained for. The ultimate nightmare scenario. But their multi-billion-dollar, multi-layered shield is compromised, flickering, and full of lies. The Admiral has seconds to make an impossible choice. His automated defense systems are screaming, flagging dozens of incoming threats. But the Janus malware is still active. Which threats are real? Which are ghosts? Firing an interceptor at a phantom target not only wastes a multi-million-dollar missile, but it also reveals the interceptor's position and trajectory, giving the real missiles a clearer path. He could be shooting at shadows while the real swords fall. It's the ultimate military gamble. Trust the machine that you know is lying to you, or trust your gut and risk everything on a guess? "Don't fire." Admiral Thompson's voice cuts through the cacophony, low and steady. Every head in the CIC turns towards him. The officer's finger freezes over the engage button. "Don't fire on their data. Fire on mine." He points not at the main tactical display, corrupted by Janus, but at a small, isolated screen showing the F-35's telemetry. "That pilot is our system now." "Cyberops." Thompson barks into his headset. "I need a clean 30-second pipe from the VLS cells to Ghost Lead's targeting pod. Bypass the Aegis Combat System entirely. Slave our interceptors to his eyes. Can you do it?" The voice of the young lieutenant commander comes back, strained but determined. "We can't kill Janus, Admiral, but we can build you a cage around it. 30 seconds, we'll get it for you." Over the radio, Thompson speaks to the pilot. "Ghost Lead, you are now the fire control for the entire strike group. Paint the targets. Call the shots. We are blind down here." The pilot's voice is impossibly calm. "Roger that, Viper." Ghost Lead is painting. The picture is clear. They're MIRVs. Multiple warheads per missile. "I'm tagging the real birds now." "Fire control, link is established," calls the cyber officer. "The pipe is clean." Thompson gives the nod. "Engage." On Ghost Lead's mark. Fire for effect. The trembling finger finally slams down on the button. A deep, percussive roar thunders through the ship as the vertical launch cells open up. "Splash 1! Splash 2!" the F-35 pilot calls out, his voice rising with a mix of terror and triumph. "Good hits! Good hits!" On the CIC screens, the phantom contacts created by Janus continue their deadly plunge. But the crew ignores them, their eyes fixed on the one clean feed from the lone fighter jet high above. They are fighting a war based on the word of one person. But there are too many. "I can't track them all," Ghost Lead yells. "One is getting through. Leaker! Leaker!" Bearing 015, aimed for the Princeton. The Princeton, another Ticonderoga cruiser, its own Aegis system a flickering ruin, is a sitting duck. There is no time for another intercept. A blinding white flash erupts on the horizon. The CIC is momentarily silenced. When their vision clears, they look at the damage control board. The icon for the USS Princeton turns from green to a stark, blood red. Communications are silent. The ship is gone, but the carrier, the heart of the fleet, is unharmed. The swarm of fast attack boats, their primary anti-ship missile support now obliterated, turns back, scattering before the carrier's launching F/A-18s. The sun begins to rise, casting a golden light over the Arabian Sea. The USS Gerald R. Ford, battered but not broken, sails on. On the main screen, the last of the phantom signals from Janus finally flicker and die. Its purpose served, its creators' gambit failed. Admiral Thompson looks out at the dawn, his face a mask of grim victory. They survived. They had stared into the heart of a new kind of warfare. A place where the enemy was not just over the horizon, but inside their very defenses, inside their own minds. They fought back not with a better machine, but with the one thing the machine could not corrupt: the trust of a single human eye. The nature of conflict is changing. The battlefield is no longer a physical place. It is a network, a system, a string of code. And on this new front, the most powerful weapon is not a missile, but the truth. To understand the technology, the tactics, and the human cost of the wars of tomorrow, you need to break through the noise. Subscribe to Breaking_the_front.